Hello and welcome to another one of our bonus episodes on the WholeHearted Living podcast with your host Deb Thorpe. And today we are diving into what it is to dare to dream, particularly after you've experienced burnout, failure, suffering, stress, and what it is to tap back into that. So let's dive in. So I wasn't planning on bringing a bonus episode in this quickly after the other one, but it has been a big week this week. And so I really wanted to share it with you whilst it's really fresh. And as I begin to really reflect and evaluate on what the last year, 2 years has been in terms of the journey to getting to this point. So as I record this, I have just received the news that my digital nomad visa application for Italy has in fact been successful. So for anyone who follows me on Instagram or on YouTube will know that there has been this very close relationship and love of Italy for the last few years. And, you know, I've been tracking back over the last few years as to where this all started and where this all came from. And, you know, as a family, I know we've had the desire of, I want to say, a bigger life. I think just a different life to what we were experiencing in the UK. And it's one that just happens to align so well with what we have experienced in Italy. So for a long time, as both me and David as a couple, but also as a family, we've talked about having a place with some land where everyone's got their own space, but we can really cultivate the land and we can become real like ethical custodians of that we can live a lifestyle that's predominantly somewhere warmer than the UK so that we can enjoy these, you know, amazing summer evenings of eating outside. And like we really elaborated on that dream over the years, and it's one that didn't go away despite the fact that after tons and tons of research, you know, none of us qualified for a visa to come here. So after Brexit, the restriction on the UK no longer being in the EU is that we are bound by only spending 90 days out of 180 days in the Schengen zone, which is pretty much all of Europe. So, you know, we knew we were working within these restrictions, but it didn't stop that dream. And, you know, there's a few things I want to share with you as I go throughout this episode, and staying true to what you know to be a deep down, true heartfelt desire, even when you can't see a way, even when it seems impossible, even when, you know, there's evidence that's telling you you don't know how it's going to happen. Staying true to that desire, like, is the most important thing. And when I reflect back, and even I'll share with you the journey of the visa, for example, this is what keeps coming through, is really staying committed and holding that desire is the thing that is going to see you through. So we held on to that. There were other visas that we qualified for in terms of, like, I could have applied for a digital nomad visa for France, Portugal, Spain, for example, and it just never quite felt right. We just couldn't, literally, it wasn't coming together. It just wasn't happening. So for those of you who have not heard about this part of my journey and don't know about it, I share this on my blog. If you go to debsthorpe.com, I'll include the link in the description. I speak about my journey of burnout, which happened realistically towards the end of 2022 and went on for the majority of 2023. So it was at the end of 22 that I realised I couldn't and didn't want to sustain the physical business that I had in the UK at the time. And the transition of then having to make staff redundant and losing an income that was providing for our family at the time, and all of the failings and everything that was going on at the time, along with burnout, so just physically, mentally, emotionally beyond exhausted at this point, that had a huge impact on me for the majority of 2023. And that showed in quite an extreme stress response in my body. So most people who would have met me wouldn't have really known that there was anything fundamentally wrong under the surface. I'm the master at being a swan, right? Looking all calm and graceful on the outside and pedaling like crazy underneath. But my body was really struggling. So I was averaging 2 to 3 hours sleep a night. As you can imagine, then everything physically was being affected. So like my hair, my nails had gone very thin and brittle. My skin was really bad. Generally, my system was incredibly depleted. And beyond the physical stuff that was going on, I was really struggling to tap back into my true dreams and desires. I was so locked in survival mode. I was so locked in the quite extreme fear and stress response that I really couldn't even connect with, this dream and desire of the like Italian dream, if you like, especially at a time when there was no feasible way that this could happen. And it was like my dreams and desires got locked away in a box somewhere, because the life I was in at that time was so intense that it was just taking absolutely every ounce of energy from me. However, there's one thing I know to be true, and I know it for myself, I know it for lots of clients. There's only so long we can go being that disconnected before like something breaks or something happens. And it got to like the summer of 2023, and I was like, I can't carry on in this. I'd managed to do a huge amount to release the physical stress in my body and the survival response, and I was working on healing the burnout. So I was beginning to be able to, come out of see the clearing out of the wood, if you like. So I was able to begin to start to breathe again. And whilst there was still no way of physically selling up and moving to Italy and that becoming our permanent life, I had long had the dream to go in the van, take the dogs, and go and tour Europe for a bit. So at that point, I started making plans that in pretty much as soon as I could after the winter of 2024, that I would plan this road trip. So that was me honouring the dream of wanting to physically be somewhere different, have the freedom to travel and explore, which I hadn't had before in that way while still working, and be able to be in Italy for a period of time and do so with my dogs and have this really amazing experience. So that was the first part of me honouring a desire to be able to spend more time in Italy and travel and have the freedom, and within the resources that I had at the time. Right, we've got a van. I had the ability to figure everything else out. So that's what happened. In February of 2024, I left the UK in the van with my 2 dogs and set out for France, drove through all of France, picked David up from Geneva Airport, and then we carried on down through Italy. I did the Rome Marathon that my parents were able to fly over for, and it was an amazing 7 weeks on the road, and yeah, just absolutely amazing. Now, during the last 2 weeks of that road trip, because I followed as much as I could about Italian visas, I was one of the first to be notified that the Italian government had did the thing that no one thought they would ever do. Even Italian lawyers that I had been following didn't believe that they would ever formally release the digital nomad visa. There's not a government in Italy at the moment that is particularly pro-immigration, and so they just believed that whilst they'd dropped the initial kind of guidance that they would release that visa at some point, they didn't believe that they would ever actually do it. And I remember the moment vividly. We were on the edge of Lake Lugano at the most stunning campsite called Camping Dana. You're literally right on the edge of the lake. It was just an evening. We were sat just relaxing at the van, and I saw the news and I was like, they have today formally released that visa. And because it was so new, they hadn't yet released all of the guidelines, but I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to be able to go for. I was very fortunate that the London consulate, the London Italian consulate, were one of the first to release the guidelines as to what the requirements were for the visa. I ticked all of the boxes, and so I set about then trying to get an appointment to submit my visa application. For anyone who's tried getting visa appointments, they're notoriously really difficult. So they tend to release them sporadically, and it's potluck whether you get them or not. I was very, very fortunate. I got a visa appointment really quickly, actually too quickly, because I then realised that they were going to hold on to my passport. I'd already got plans to come back out to Italy, and I needed my passport. So I had to shift my visa appointment slightly later, again, which I was able to do, and apply for a second passport. So all of this stuff started to come together. So one of the big, that tends to be one of the big barriers, and I've spoken to a lot of people now who they're also going for this visa, is that you have to have at least a year's lease. That has to be a registered lease on a property in Italy to show that you have somewhere to stay. So, literally from the moment that we knew the visa was going to be released, we were contacting landlords, we were trying to arrange viewings. It was like, it kind of didn't matter what the place was. We just knew we needed that lease document in place, ready for the visa interview. I happened to be scrolling the listings one evening. By this point, we were back in the UK, and I found a really cheap 1-bed apartment in the area that we have already got a friend living in Italy. So I dropped him a message. He was like, I'll contact the landlord, I'll arrange a viewing. And within a week, our friend Mark was having a viewing with the landlord. He'd got us on FaceTime, and he was like, do you want it? I was like, well, you're there. If you think this is good. He was like, I think it's amazing. I would take it. And the landlord had got loads of viewings that day, but he was like, no, I'll let you guys have it. And we managed to get a lease in place with, honestly, one of the most kindest, most generous landlords. And it's in the most stunning location. For anyone who, again, follows me on Instagram, you will have seen many photos of our beautiful little village, and it all worked out just amazingly well. So everything started to fall into place. Okay, from me having to put all of the paperwork together for the visa and the lease working out and all of these things. So it was, amazing. Obviously, we basically had to kind of create a life out here without knowing if we would actually be able to stay here permanently. And, I guess that's one of the hardest things when we talk about these true desires and what it is to tap into them, despite what the physical evidence might be at the time, is really embodying that knowing that desire is meant for you. And so therefore it's going to find its way, versus kind of looking at all of the evidence all of the time physically around you and going, well, how's this going to happen? What about that? Like, your mind will continually throw up things against you sometimes when we talk about these situations. And, there's many, many times when we could have tapped into and allowed that voice to be greater than the voice of the desire and the dream, right? This came at a time when I decided I was going to change how I was going to work. So I lost about 80% of my income, more or less like within a few weeks, because I wanted to change the way that I was working. So at the time when we were taking on another property and all of the expenses that go with that, I actually lost most of my income. We hadn't got all of the logistics of what this was going to look like in place. So there's been a lot of playing around with our Schengen entitlement of, I've had to come out and fly back, and David's then come out and flew back, and to ensure that we're within the 90-day limit. So, in lots of ways, there could have been a million reasons why we didn't keep pushing forward and following what has felt like intuitive little breadcrumbs along the pathway, right? And, I think we kind of both just sat here and said, it's kind of that thing of go big or go home. And I said, I need to do this. I need to follow the desire. I need to follow all of the intuition nudges. I need to take the action, even when that's uncomfortable, and see where this goes, because this is what I'm teaching. This is what I'm embodying. And if I can't do it for myself, I certainly can't guide other people into it. So this is where the rubber hits the road, right? So we kept on with that. So My visa appointment in London was on the 4th of July. I spent all of July actually pretty much in the UK, and then me and David with the 2 dogs drove out to Italy on the 13th of August. So that was kind of like okay, well, I'm out here until either my Schengen runs out or the visa comes through. That was the attitude. So I believe it was some point towards the end of August, I got my first contact from the Italian consulate requesting some more information. So they wanted a bit more evidence about certain things. They wanted a particular conversion done on my qualifications, and they requested a cover letter, which they hadn't done before. Now, they needed me to log into a website with regards to my qualifications that actually closed for the whole summer. So when I went on, it's called Simia. I went onto the website. It was like, right, we're closed until the 8th of September. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't submit anything. You couldn't view anything. I was like, okay, I'll put everything else in place and I'll just plead my case to request an extension on the visa application. Within that, I knew the cover letter would be quite significant. So one morning, I got up early and sat and wrote and really put my whole heart and soul into this cover letter and demonstrated that I was a competent professional and that I had such a deep love for Italy, for the people, the culture. I had based moving my whole life here, and this was a permanent move for me. This was not something I was playing at. And, I provided photos and I was able to give them evidence of the life that we had created so far here. And it really was, if ever I was going to put my heart and soul on a piece of paper, this was it. So I sent all of that information back along with please, can you just hold the application for a bit because I can't do anything with my qualifications until September. And I had this really random thought of, before this thought, the information that came from the consulate and the visa application centre was take everything they say literally. So if they're asking for something specific, do that exact thing as they're asking for it. So I was like, okay, that makes sense, that's fine. Obviously, I couldn't do the qualifications bit. I pleaded my case with them. I then had this really random thought after I'd written the cover letter and literally poured my heart into it that said, wouldn't it be really amazing if the person who's processing the application reads this cover letter and is so just amazed by it, and they really understand who I am as a person as a result of this cover letter, and they just grant the visa. And of course, I've never had to go through a visa process before, but you kind of go, that's not how it works. Right? If they're requesting some information, then they're going to need that information. So it was just one of those thoughts that kind of dropped in my brain and kind of left. So anyway, a few weeks goes by and we're now mid-September. I start going on to Simia and all of sorting out my qualifications, and it's so confusing. I can't make head nor tail of it because I don't have a single degree that needs the equivalence done from the UK to Italy. I've got like 6 years of different qualifications. So it's multiple certificates that need translating and trying to figure out what's equivalent. And I just, honestly, it was so confusing. I was like, please don't make me have to do this, because I think this is going to be really tough. So, I'm just kind of trying to figure stuff out, but stalling a little bit, I would say. I then received notification that an item is going to be delivered to my house in the UK, and I know it's coming from the consulate. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that means for the application. I didn't receive any other information. No email update, no sign of whether the application is on hold and they're sending back some stuff that they've got of mine, or if it's been denied and they're not going to hold it, or all of this stuff. No indication at all. There was something about that notification, though, that deep down I knew it was the application had been successful. It was just my logical brain was coming in going, but that's not possible because you haven't done the qualification bit yet, and you know that was a requirement. So missed the delivery on the Friday, and so then I had to reschedule it for the Monday, and I rescheduled it to my parents' house because I knew that they would be in, and then had the weekend of the wait of knowing that the document's arriving, but I don't know what that is. I'm really just having to sit with, it's not going to serve me to worry about this and dwell on this all weekend. What will be, will be. Even if it's a rejection at this stage, I can appeal. There's other things I can do. Like, it's fine. So we had decided to head out for the day on the Monday, and my parents opened the envelope, and it was my passport with the visa in it. So the visa's been granted for a year, and it's just, it was one of the most surreal situations of, when you truly embody a desire and a dream, and you know that it is like deep down in your soul, in your core, meant for you, it feels normal when that then comes to be in reality, right? Because it's like, well, I knew this moment was going to come, which is kind of like how it felt on Monday. And at the same time, my logical brain going, this is really surreal because this shouldn't be happening. There's loads and loads of reasons as to why this shouldn't be. And it's struggling to make sense of it. And, I've been answering lots and lots of questions about this visa recently because it's very new and very few people have applied for it or been successful with it. And so I'm one of the first, particularly from the UK, that have been granted this. So I'm answering lots of questions about it, and I'm like, I can only go from my perspective of what it is within the greater context of a desire and a dream, rather than, oh, wouldn't Italy be a nice place to live for a bit? So I wanted to share this story, one, because it's a dream and a desire that has been there for a long time, that until very recently was impossible, right? Like, we've held on to this dream despite the fact that the evidence would tell us it's not possible, and it's happened. But also what it is to follow that dream and desire when you are recovering, and your body, mind, emotions, everything are recovering from having been battered and disconnected and all this kind of stuff, So I I really just wanted to share what's possible, that even if you're currently in a life that you feel like you have to be in, but is not really what you want, or you feel like you've got some dreams and desires, but they feel so big or they feel so out there that you don't see how they're possible, that there's ways that you can connect with them that ensure that the path opens up. And I love the way that someone had described this to me a while ago, which is we all have our own dreams and desires. They're going to be different for all of us. But if you have a desire and it's a true desire, like you can feel it, it excites you when you think about it, it lights you up, there's an aliveness in it. If that's a true desire for you and you have that within you, it's because it's already there, waiting for you. It's there, ready for you to claim it. And so all you then have to do is follow I call it like the intuitive breadcrumbs that take you to that desire, that bring it into fruition. And, you know, quite oftentimes, as has been the case with my journey recently, there's almost like magic within that. It defies logic. It defies, you know, what you've believed to be possible. How it all comes together will be in a way that you probably could never have predicted, you know? And so I wanted to share that with you to reignite, reawaken this that you probably already know to be true within you. But we tend to forget it, and we forget it easy when we get caught up in life. I've been there. I've been stuck in that for many, many years before. And so I know what it is to have a desire, to not know how that's going to come about, but to feel it strongly, and at the same time live a life that feels very different and very, like, quite far away from that. So I know what it is to bring all of that together. And, you know, honestly, typically what we're envisaging in that desire, it becomes so much more than that. So I think about what this has done for our family, you know, that we, you know, it's ignited possibilities within the family, and like strengthening relationships, the friendships that we formed out here, just the sheer amount of healing that's happened just from being in this environment. Like, it becomes so much more. And so today, this is my invitation to you to allow yourself to tap into your true desires and almost ask yourself what it would be if you were to allow yourself to fully receive that desire as true for you. Like, what would happen? And if you allow yourself to be fully supported in that process, because I know typically, again, this is for myself and for clients I work with as well, you might be the only one who can see that desire, right? So it can be really hard when there's people around you that either don't share the same dream or desire or just don't get it, right? It can keep you locked in the place that you're currently in for far longer than you need to be. And so I really wanted to create a container that is supportive of people who have these dreams and desires and want to know what it is like practically in the real world, to follow them, to allow yourself to receive them, to strengthen your intuitive knowing, to what it is to work with your nervous system so that it doesn't get so triggered, and you are teaching it to expand in, there's going to be an expansion as you go into your dreams and desires. So what it is to work with your body and your nervous system and your mindset and your emotions as you walk this path, like doing this in a way that immensely supports you as you walk this path. And I really felt strongly to create this. Obviously, very clearly, I walk this path. I know what it is. I know from a very lived experience what it is to have these desires, bring them into fruition, and work with your very human, logical self at the same time. I'm also a really skilled therapist and coach, and I know what it is to guide other people through this as well. So I have created what is going to be a very small, intimate container for 7 people to come together to have what is going to be 8 weeks of teaching, guidance, coaching sessions, as well as lots of resources to ignite and really fire up those dreams and desires, and what it then is to walk the path of those. And I'm one of my skill sets is taking quite big spiritual, energetic principles and being able to ground them very much in real everyday life and what that means for us as we go about our life. So if you'd like to know the details of that, I'll include the link in the description. I'd love to connect with you personally. This is something really on my heart at the moment, because when I talk about the profound effect that this has, it goes so far beyond just yourself. For every person who steps into the fullest version of themselves, into their greatest dreams and desires, like, it changes the world. It's just the most phenomenal experience. So I'm really passionate about this. So if you're wanting to know more, if there's anything in what I've shared today that resonates for you, I would love to hear from you. I would love to work with you in this way, and I very much hope that we connect soon. All right, take care, and bye for now.